Dave McGee
has joined the conference.
Hi, Gwen. This is Pedraza from the Google Apps for Education team.
Has joined the conference.
We're going to get started here now that it's 10 a.m. Pacific time. Thanks to everyone for tuning in today. I'm joined here with Max Davis Johnson, Associate Vice President of Information Technology from Boise State University. Today in this webinar, we're actually continuing an installment of 3 previous CIO Fireside chats that we previously had with other universities using Google Apps for Education. I found these events to be proven very worthwhile, so continuing this with Boise State. So as we continue to work with other universities who are either currently using Google Apps or evaluating using Google Apps, we certainly learn from and appreciate the insight of a fellow CIO from a school who has been using apps for quite a while. Actually, Boise State has been using Google Apps for their students since 2008. So with that, I'll hand it over to Max. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please send them in the chat window. So we'll pause for questions at the end, so feel free to bring up anything there. Let me transfer this over to Max.
Has conference.
You should be a presenter now.
Okay. And so I was assuming that there would just be a series of questions that you would ask me, but certainly let me talk about a few things here, and then we can probably go into some of the questions I had or presented to me earlier. As Jordan mentioned, we implemented Student started in January of 2008, and we were complete that in May of 2008. We were also an early adopter, I say relatively early, one of the first schools to go with faculty and staff for using Google Apps. And we started that process. We actually ran a pilot in the fall of 2008, and we went live with in May of 2009. I think initially probably the moving students to Gmail is fairly straightforward, certainly from our perspective. Obviously, a lot of students have already been in the Gmail; they're familiar with it. Certainly, going from we were moving from Groupwise, Novell Groupwise to Gmail, and just the ability for the quotas and a client that's a web-based client that's constantly evolving certainly made a lot of sense from our perspective. From a staff and faculty standpoint, change can be a little bit harder for them, and so initially when we ran the pilot, we used not only our office, the Office of Information Technology, the library, Ag Technologies, and they also included anybody that wanted to be part of this early adopter process. But certainly, getting with these groups early, talking to them about what was going on. We provided a lot of documentation, a lot of meetings. We did some videos. Certainly we tried to do all we could to sort of, I call it holding their hands as we moved them forward. We did manually convert the mailboxes to email, and technically was one of our more challenging things that we did. Looking at, I think our users struggled at the beginning a little bit with threaded. Our faculty and staff with the concept of threaded conversations, because they weren't used to it. Certainly now that we've been doing this for quite a while, the thought of not having thread conversations, I wasn't sure how to manage that myself. But that was probably our biggest complaint at the beginning. Look at something that we would have done with the version going forward. Certainly, probably change management. We could have always have done a little bit better. Like having better, having more visible executive support on this. I was actually here during that transition, so I came in a little bit after we had made the move here, and certainly I heard
conference
complaints about what was going on in that regard. So certainly we're really excited about. We are one of the early Google Plus apps for higher ed. We were just about 2 weeks ago that became available to us, and we are very excited about the use of it, the potential there with being able to create circles that reflect classes in the classroom.
Join the conference.
That we can keep sort of our multiple personalities separate within our circles. Trying to use it within OIT, we've created various work group circles. I think it's going to be really nice. One thing that really excites us is the multi-point video, the Hangout feature that I think is going to have is very beneficial for us, both from just work coordination, but also from a student standpoint. The things that are really on Google Apps for a couple years now. From a student perspective, it's really exciting to see the amount of collaboration that they do from a sharing standpoint. We probably, if you look at our current numbers, there's probably about 120,000 documents in the student domain that are currently shared by student population. In our employee domain, we have about 90,000 Google Docs out there shared with about 500 active users. Probably look at the breakdown of those. 45,000, about half of those are docs. About 21,000 are spreadsheets. We've got about 10,000 that are PDFs that are sharing. The rest up others, and probably about 1,000 of the presentations that we're sharing out there in the Google app domain. So if you look at some of the one of the things I think that's really interesting from a Boise State perspective, if you look at some of the marketplace apps we're using Cloud Lock, which shows usage of the Google Docs. It also allows us to transfer ownership of Docs in the event that someone leaves the university or we need to do something there. But look at the numbers there. It's really encouraging to see that you look at the top 10 number of user ID that share documents that our president is constantly in the top 10. Now, these shared docs not only represent documents that he is sharing, but they're documents that are being shared with him. The reality is he may not be aware that all these documents are being shared with him, but it is encouraging to see that certainly at the executive level that the collaboration is taking place within the Google app domain. talk a little bit about how it has changed our community and the way it communicates or collaborates. Our own OIT department, we are in about 16 different physical locations here on the Boise State campus, and that's not so unusual, I think. But the fact that we use chat extensively, video chat, we really use as much as we can. One of the things that I have asked everybody to do within OIT, and hopefully it will take on in the university, is, I've asked everybody to make sure that they have a current photograph, attached to the Google app. So certainly when you're in Gmail, when you're looking at your list, it's a lot of times it's very beneficial to actually see a face sometimes, especially if you're working within a large organization. When we noticed, we're talking about change, one thing we noticed that once we started this project, our smartphone usage has doubled over the first 5 months of the project, just because the fact now that we could, using the having, Gmail and calendaring available a wide variety of smartphone platforms certainly has increased usage there, and it's only continued to increase over the past 2.5 years, that we've had it. The integration, the smartphone integration with calendar and mail has been really driven the use of mobile devices for us. We also are a customer care organization, which includes our help desk, desktop support, things like that here at the university. We're using Google Docs to distribute software. For instance, antivirus install, we put up in Google Docs, and that helps limit the access to only the campus community. So like I said, I think initially on our Google, certainly because there was change, there was different. Certainly there was some back. I think a lot of the administrative staff that sort of on a almost a minute by minute basis in the Groupwise environment, that was probably who it was the roughest on. But one, we were able to do get them up to speed on calendaring. I think get them up to speed on. Once Google actually released the policy for the Gmail accounts themselves, certainly that solidified use of Google Apps among staff and faculty. So I think obviously it's been a very, very positive move from the campus, both from a technical standpoint, because certainly not having to, I think, not having to worry about your own email infrastructure, relying on Google's email infrastructure, relying on web interface. It's constantly improving, from the Gmail client, from the Gmail interface itself to all the apps that are available, all the new features that are currently being addressed. Certainly that fits into our philosophy of focusing on core technologies to the university and those technologies that are contextual to the university. Granted, they're still very important, but partnering with somebody like Google, whose core technology is the Gmail and the Google app domain, certainly that fits very well into our philosophy here at Boise State. So with that, I guess I'd like to open it up to questions.
I see a few questions coming in here in the chat. First one was about handling shared resources. How does Boise State address sharing resources that multiple people need to manage? Groups?
we do use groups fairly extensively, and we use them for distribution lists. Certainly, within our organization and other organizations, we work pretty closely with making sure that the technical staff outside of OIT understand how they work. We do provide support certainly through our help desk. We have something we've done I think is pretty unique. We have probably twice a week. We have a ongoing. We call it a blog, but actually it's more of a dictation site. But we have one of our main blogs is something we call and it's one of our
the conference.
One of the staff actually writes a weekly, or a couple times a week. We'll post a lot of information on that. But all we use resources to manage our meeting rooms too. We also use the resources there to help manage that also. Well for us.
And then kind of a follow-up question to that from the same person. With your route to faculty and staff, do you move people by departments, groups, or all at once?
We move over by departments.
And then someone asked about use of, I think, consumer Gmail prior to your project. So they were wondering if you could talk about that transition a little bit.
I guess in what context? The fact other folks were using?
Yeah, the question's a little vague at this point, but I think they said they assume some students, faculty, and staff were using Gmail prior to your Google Apps project.
Oh, okay.
So.
And that, I guess that never really came up in the context of things. I certainly think being able to use the redirect to that. We all created a poll. I guess people would say they wanted Google Apps because they were in Gmail, so we would work with them. There weren't that, again, like I said, I wasn't quite here through that transition, but the sense I get was we would help people transition to the Boise State account, or in some cases we would certainly work with them, so them how they could for all their Boise State account to their existing official account. But I think try to encourage them to go the other way, to go to their Boise State account. The doc collaboration. Let's see.
Another question about groups. Do you manage groups through OIT, or do you allow anyone to create a Google group?
Both. We tend to have sort of official groups, but certainly we don't discourage anybody for creating their own group. We do have people that specifically manage the official lists or official groups that we need.
Mm-hmm. Question about authentication. What do you use for authentication and login? Shift, Active Directory, something else?
The native Google sign-on, and we synchronize our passwords.
Okay. Tools did you use to migrate or convert Groupwise mailboxes to Gmail?
I've got Brian Bolt here in the room, and I might have him speak to that since he was here during the transition and I wasn't.
Hello, everyone. I'm kind of technical backup for this conversation, but as far as the Groupwise migration went, we incorporated a tool that allows us to collect all of the group archives into an offline archive. That would include also the active mailbox. So the goal was that we wanted to maintain, let's say, the user's mailbox account for perpetuity, just for the sake of users being able to go back and access their mail. Because when we converted to Google Apps for each account, we'd have 2 weeks of overlapping mail, but we wouldn't actually pull over all of the Groupwise mail because we had a concern that doing so would actually for the overall Groupwise system, just because of the sheer amount of traffic and data moved back and forth. The information we collected told us that wasn't feasible. So it was a manual approach to collect all that information, store it offline, so that even without the Groupwise archive, people could get back to their old mail. And then we used a tool on the system side from a company called Guava, and that tool allowed us to set forwarding rules on each Groupwise account. So as administrators, when we were planning for the actual department migration, we could, each person in that department, set a forwarding rule so that mail was delivered in both spots until the transition was completed. So the archiving tool that we used, as well as the administrative tool, were the two common, or the two predominant tools that we used for the migration.
Great, Brian. Google Apps Marketplace. Are there any other Google Marketplace apps that you all are using?
We're using and EasyBib. I don't know about. I don't know how widespread the use of has been. I know EasyBib. Certainly, just anecdotally, I used it a few times to do some things that I've been working on. I don't have any usage numbers on that right now, but I can probably get those and those available.
Okay, Aviary and EasyBib.
Right.
It's like those are both from our education category too.
Yes.
That's cool. Okay, next question about smartphones. Do you have any insight on smartphone use, either before and after switching to Google Apps, and the number of calendar users?
We do not. I'll pass it on to Brian, since I think he's got the numbers.
One of the things we noticed during the actual migration was that the number of people actually using smartphones to connect to their mail doubled during that short 5-month implementation phase. And we've seen across campuses that more and more faculty and staff are using them because the barriers to using them went away when we went to Google Apps. Back in the day when we were using Groupwise, had a BlackBerry, and then that would connect to the BlackBerry Enterprise server, and there was an administrative setup involved there, as well as a cost, and that doesn't exist anymore. So because of change, it really has kicked off connectivity between people's smartphones and the domain, which it makes people a lot efficient knowing where their calendar appointments are just by looking at their smartphone. So that's a really good thing.
I have a question about executive secretaries. Are executive secretaries happy with the delegation features of Google, i.e. send on behalf of or calendar delegation? Widely used?
I would certainly say that the people I deal with, it's very widely used. I guess it's a little mixed on how well they like it. I mean, I think there's some people, and certainly my admin, has flourished very well in the Google environment. I know there's a few individuals that that's a bit just one because they're trying to manage. I think they make it hard for themselves, where they have multiple calendars that they're trying to manage, and sometimes I think they get in their own way. But at the same time, we are very actively engaged in support to them. They know that if they have any type of issue, especially at the executive level, if they call, we'll address it immediately, get somebody over there to help them. So we've taken an approach if there are some issues that we'll do whatever it takes to make sure it works for them.
There's a quick follow-up question to the previous question on smartphone usage. They're wondering if you could share exact numbers when you said you saw that usage doubled before and after Google Apps.
So I went from the small hundreds to the medium hundreds. So exact numbers on those, but just the frame reference that I have, from the 2,100 full-time faculty and staff plus the student employees, we were probably sitting around 10 to 15% usage at the time of the actual roll, and then that doubled during that time frame, and it's gone up since from there.
The questions about alumni. Do you all plan to release all apps to alumni, and do you foresee support issues with such a larger user community?
I'm just laughing because no, we've been having those conversations. Right now, the way if a student, we let a student in system for 4 semesters, I want to say 4 semesters, and once no activity after 4 semesters, we will delete their account. Now, if they graduate from university and they're not coming, say, back to grad school or something, our current policy is in 6 months to delete them from the domain. We're currently identifying a process, so starting next May, we will, students that graduate, we will allow them to keep their log at the university, including their Gmail account and their apps going forward. Now we're still trying to determine what type of policy we would do for existing alumni that are currently not part of our domain. We plan to have some sort of mechanism for them to get a Boise State alumni account, but we haven't quite determined how we're going to handle that. But really anticipate that as the sport being a problem. But again, we haven't quite thought that through the whole way. And hopefully there's some out in the higher ed domain that have done this, and they can give us a little bit of feedback and insight on the effort involved there. But it's certainly something we plan to do, like I said, starting next spring.
Okay. Let's see here. Next question. What does he have to bring calendar users to get them up to speed?
I think, again, that we used a lot of different methods there. I think, documentation, obviously, putting online documentation out there. We currently, during the transition, and then we had, training classes, especially with the admin groups. If you happen to go out to our, I mentioned earlier, we've got essentially it's a blog page where we do the types of things, and Google Gal is one of our most popular blogs. And again, she does some weekly things. We probably every other month we publish, and it's updated, but 40 top tips for using Google Calendar. And if you went out to Bronco Bytes, one word, BON, BOYTES.boisestate.edu, you will see some Google Gal entries, and then also there's a whole separate blog category for Google Gal, and you could get a sense for how we communicate in that regard. We all have monthly classes that we offer in Google Apps, including calendaring, where basically you sign up and you come and we'll walk you through the apps and help train you in that.
There was a follow-up question earlier on synchronizing passwords. So you mentioned that you are synchronizing passwords. Could you elaborate on how are you synchronizing and what are you synchronizing to?
Ryan again. So what we are doing is we're synchronizing and passwords from our directory, the trigger in our identity management system. So it's one-way synchronization from our internal directory to Google Apps, and that allows us to use native Google Apps login page.
This is kind of more broader question. How to address security concerns?
I think I'm a developer at heart. I grew up as a developer, and certainly, security is a concern. But I think, the idea that what we maintain on our servers is more secure. What Google does, in my book, is it's sort of poppycock, because I think the Google security army is a heck of a lot stronger than any of my security staff. Google has people dedicated, focused on it. Again, certainly, get people's passwords, whether it's in the Google domain or my domain or anybody else's domain. Certainly that. That's a concern. But I think at the end of the day, to hack the systems at Boise State, the reality is it's a lot easier than trying to hack Google. So I guess I really don't lose a lot of sleep over that.
Kind of a follow-up on that. Did you get any pushback from researchers about the fact that sensitive and potentially export-controlled data might be stored on servers outside the U.S.?
And certainly that's a bit of a concern. But I think you look at what you say the Google data centers are, and certainly don't have those in hostile neighbors or hostile countries. I think once you got through the fact that, hey, Google data centers are a lot more secure than anything we do, it became somewhat of a non-issue for us. Though, as research gets more collaborative, when I say more collaborative, institutions in the future, that I think Google needs a way to similar to what they're doing with Google Gov, but having the ability to sort of specify where the data actually is being stored, and that's a little bit counterintuitive what Google tries to do. But at the same time, I just think in the research space, this is something that Google probably need to address here in the future.
Absolutely, and that is something we're exploring on our end. So thanks for bringing that up again.
Sure.
Another question back to mobile. Which mobile devices do you support?
I guess certainly the iOS, the iPhone, Android is very prominent here. BlackBerry. I think we'll basically support them all. The good news, we don't see a lot of Palm anymore. So, but we certainly would try. So one of the things that we've done here recently is we have the zones. We have a couple of them across campus, but basically the idea is you have a device, bring it into us, and we'll help you get connected, synchronized. And I think where maybe in the past some people have been struggling a little bit with getting their Google apps on their phones, we've been able to assist them. And I think that's worked out very well for all of us here. So basically, we'll try to support anything out there.
This question's kind of going back to the earlier days. Who made the final decision in your organization to move to Google Apps?
I'm looking at Brian.
So when we started the and staff migration, we did pilot phase, and this was after the student rollout had completed and we were successful there. So the pilot phase for faculty and staff started in December of 2008 and came in December of 2008. So 2 months ago, 300 people were on the pilots or the early adopter phase. And prior to the start of the project, our Vice President of Finance and Administration sent out an email saying, this is where we're going with Google Apps for faculty and staff. And with that letter that was sent out, that kicked off the project for us, and we went forward.
Everyone's asking in follow-up to that, did you research any other competing platforms, such as Microsoft's Zimbra? Why did you pick Google?
This goes back to 2007 when I very first saw Google Apps, and then 2008 when we deployed to students. That's almost a decade ago in terms of computing and cloud computing at that. And at that point in time, Microsoft's Live product was not really available to faculty and staff, only to students. So when we looked at this project as a whole and where it could go, we knew that faculty and staff were part of the equation. And since they were there was a cost involved there on the Microsoft side. I know they've since changed that, but we're talking quite a long time ago. That pretty much solidified Google as the choice if we wanted to move from the old style of doing business with email systems. That was really what heavily influenced our decision.
The fact that it worked.
Another school that says that they recently moved their faculty and staff to Google Apps, that they've also heard that one complaint is that they can't see members of your STEM distribution groups. Is there any way that Boise has worked around that?
The members of a Google group not being...
Yes, I think that's what they're referring to.
That's something that's come to the surface, so I don't have a good response to that. Typically, the groups that I'm a member of or a manager of, so therefore I kind of have that different perspective and not that from a recipient in a lot of cases. I mean, of course I do, but I haven't gone back and looked to see who is members of those groups that I'm only a member of. So I don't have a clear answer for that one, Jordan.
Okay. Let's see. Do you use Google Analytics with Google Docs?
We have not. No.
Okay. Let's see. Items reported by Mac users that did not or does not negatively impact PC users.
So we wish our client, our user base, our clients, to using a web app, the standard Google Mail, Google Calendar user interface. And that was one of the chief reasons why the underpinnings of why we went to Google was one user interface across whatever platform you're running from, whether it's at work on a Mac, or at work on a PC, or at home, or on the road for work. You have that same user interface, that same look and feel.
Left the conference.
So from the perspective of does it work on a Mac? Yes, it does. Are there idiosyncrasies? We've seen that when the Mac Mail client or other pieces are introduced into the flow of things, such as iMapping mail or for that. But you know, that is one of the strong suits of Google, is having your users or your client base leverage the simple and this user interface.
In addition to that, do you support email clients other than the web interface?
Very limited. A few folks in our College of Business do use Outlook. We not directly support it.
And do you have any executive assistants that use Outlook?
No. The main reason because we don't export it. I think like earlier, we really respond quickly to our executive assistants because that's critical to adoption and favorably on the product. So we definitely get over there very quickly if there is a problem. Work very closely with them.
Great. Our general question about Boise State: how many students are enrolled? And for your Google workshops that you mentioned earlier, are they well attended?
Let's see. Currently, we're 20. I say 20,000. We're 19,992. I don't know why we couldn't have fudged 8 more there somewhere to get to 20,000, but we're almost 20,000. And our training tends to be. Some of it is somewhat on the time of the year, but typically, and this is we don't very a lot of student attendance at this. It's more staff and faculty oriented. But beginning of as we get a lot of new staff over the summer, so early fall we probably get 20 to 30 in each session, and then later in the semester maybe it's 10 to 12, and beginning of the next semester it'll gear up a little bit again. So it's a little bit cyclical.
Okay. Back on mobile devices. You all have zones managed by students or staff with others to connect up their mobile devices?
The zone is, and our help desk is pretty much all student support, and we actually run that service from 7 in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday. And also have in the student union, we also have a satellite zone, and that actually is similar hours, but it's also opened on the weekends too. More limited hours on the weekend, more like 9 to 4. But we do have go on site. And again, it's certainly we work with the students to train them, get them up to speed. Typically, there's a full-time staff member in the vicinity. For the most part, the students are able to handle all the majority of the walk-in traffic that we have.
Great. Couple questions on backing things up. Do you all back up Google Apps, and how?
No, we don't back up.
Question about integration. Could you please talk about your integration with your LMS and how Google Apps has enhanced or created any issues?
We're pretty much a Blackboard right now, and right now there's a building block that I think Vanderbilt built. Or
it was Northwestern.
It's Northwestern. My bad. Northwestern, called Baboogle. Just love the name. I think, my understanding, Blackboard has acquired that. We have put that in our test environment, but currently we haven't completed the implementation of that building block. I think students in general, when they're doing collaboration, because of we just use Blackboard Learn and not any of the collaboration suite, they rely on the Google Docs for majority of their document type collaboration. Also, I think from a standpoint of probably their individual chatting, they're in there. But I think right now there is no formal integration between Google Apps and Blackboard. The state of Idaho is we've just made a 4-year commitment to Blackboard, and so I think certainly moving forward we're going to be formalizing that integration between Blackboard and Google Apps, because those are both keys for the academic side of the house for us going forward.
Mm-hmm. I think you mentioned earlier that you were involved in one of the earlier schools launching Google Plse. Other social media initiatives that Boise State is looking at?
Other than say the normal regulation, having various Facebook pages within different groups. There's nothing yet at the university level. Certainly, we our help desk and technology. I mean, we're trying to be somewhat active in blog, things like that. But we haven't done very much in that domain.
Part of that as a follow-up, do you all have a Plse page yet?
Yes, we do. Yes, and in fact, we have I see. As an institution, no, we do not. We do not. But certainly, I've had a discussion with our desk there, and we're in the process of putting that together, at least from a OIT and probably from a Boise State standpoint. Thank you, reminder.
Question
I do have an OIT circle of all OIT staff, though.
A couple of questions back on identity management. What does Boise State use for identity and access management system?
Currently, we are
At the conference.
The solution today is one I've been using for a while, but that is probably going to change here in the next few months as we start looking at that more heavily from a holistic approach.
But this is, as a lot of universities, we've gone through a variety of things, and so we have pieces of Novell still in place. We have LDAP pieces, Active Directory pieces, and I think certainly as we forward in higher ed, and you're talking more worldwide domains and services from all over, that we've got to get a little bit more consistent, unified approach there. So what we're now is not what we're going to be doing in the future.
Back to Google Groups. Have you found Google Groups to be an adequate replacement for having a separate mass email distribution system?
We found it to be a sufficient tool, and that we entirely replace the listserv system. So, just a thing with the different apps that are available from Google, with domain calendaring displacing, our own system, we were able to displace our entire listserv with Google Groups. And what we found is that, the functionality from the list or the list manager, even a list member, is more self-service capable than the system that we were previously using. So we really did find that to be a suitable placement.
Back to calendar. With calendar sharing, do you find faculty sharing calendars with students for office hours or anything like that?
I think somewhat on a limited basis. It's not it's not an institution practice to do that. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, as we Google into the academic curriculum, we've got a new Director of Academic Technologies now, and I'm really optimistic that we'll be looking at a lot more of a standard tool set, for faculty, and that would be part of it.
A question on Google Plus. Has there been any confusion about offering Google Plus between a consumer identity and a university identity?
I would say no to that. I mean, certainly, I think some of us had our own Google Plus when it first became available, but the feedback that we were getting from students was like when it was going to become available to our EU domain.
And there was a question on that. Oh, go ahead.
Sure.
Sorry.
Like I said, so I don't think there was much confusion on the process. I mean, I think some of us are and maybe it's already been announced. I know they're meaning that a conversion tool would be available soon.
Yes. Just a follow-up question on that. Has there been any confusion about who can see posts that's inside or outside of Boise State?
I mean, yeah, certainly you have with Google Plus have a little bit more of finer grain control of who sees what. Probably just because Google Plus is new, but I mean, there's been nothing that's bought up. Oh, I didn't know that was a public post.
Mm-hmm.
And Jordan, I do need to correct an earlier statement made about Google Plus pages.
Mm-hmm.
Our customer care group, our help desk group, has a Google Plus page for their essentially the zone that they work from. So we are yes on the curve with that.
Another question on Google Plus, actually. How do you all deal with minors using Google Plus? 18.
We're trying to look the other way. I guess we don't. Certainly we do have students that are not, but we haven't gone there yet. And I think we're trying to honestly just trying to avoid that problem.
And about Postini, do you all use Postini or any other archival tools?
No.
Okay. Marketplace apps. How have you all handled requests for Google Marketplace apps? Both the licensing cost and OIT support level perspective.
We do get the emails to the administrators of the domain periodically where people will request that a new app be enabled. And what we've done is we've taken a look at the that are freely available in the marketplace that apply to the educational environment, EasyBib, and have rolled those out. We did that in a single wave last summer, and we haven't a second wave at this point, but we are collecting that feedback and anticipating doing a second wave of rolling out additional apps from the marketplace where it makes sense. Cost is always a consideration. We do each app independently and try to make a business
has left the conference
on how valuable it is and what it provides.
Questions for anyone? Please submit them in the chat window. Okay, one. If you could do your transition to apps all over again, would you do anything differently? What would be the same?
and I think I alluded to that a little bit earlier. I think probably a little bit more visible about the executive support for the project. I think certainly there were some change management things, such as we were more of a distributed environment back then, and so a lot of our communication to individual departments, having them get up to speed, we relied somewhat on some of the local tech representatives, so that probably a little hit and miss, and so probably taking a stronger enterprise role of the of Google Apps, of Gmail. I think we would have taken that approach, but at the same time being fairly aggressive on the transition. Students is fairly straightforward, but on the transition with faculty and staff, I think we would have definitely tried to keep that pace, because I think when you're trying to coexist in both, say, your system you're transitioning from to and Google, you want to definitely minimize that window.
And then another question on your communication strategy. What sort of communication strategy did you employ to keep campus notified prior to and after the migration process?
Left the conference.
Our customer care team was very instrumental in this. There were approaches that we took. Basic, just the help desk web pages were updated with information about the migration, the moves, the scheduling. But the key components were the getting to Google sessions, which were held in some larger classrooms across campus. We'd book an auditorium classroom and then show the basics, the ins and outs of Gmail and calendaring. So our customer care group did probably a half a dozen times. We had fairly good attendance at those. 100 people or so that would come and see what was going on and ask questions. The other critical piece was prior to the migration for each department, there would be a customer care representative that would actually visit with the department, go through a checklist of items about what would be taking place once the transition happened, and preparing them for the upcoming change. And then the day of the change for the department, there would be a person on site who would actually work with them, get all of their items archived, and start using the new mail system. So we did a lot of communication prior to and during the actual department migrations, and then we stayed in touch afterwards. But one of the things that would have helped us along a little bit on the after migration piece would have been an lab where people could just drop by and ask questions. We got the video tutorials, while very efficient, compressed in a 7-minute time frame. You can learn how to do something. Oftentimes people could, they need to have the distraction in their office with the phone ringing, an email message coming in, somebody walking by. And so just getting somebody out of their office to a lab where they could pull up their Gmail or calendar and show a professional what problem they're having, that's a unique way of actually diagnosing a problem. It's not necessarily unique, but from the perspective of having somebody dedicated to manning those open labs is something that you have to be aware of and prepared for.
We're almost out of time here. Just 2 more quick questions. First is, how does Boise deal with e-discovery? And second, how do you deal with spam filtering?
So, I'll second one. The spam filtering question, which is, we found that is part of migration from students from the old mail system to the new mail system, and that we didn't have a significant amount of calls coming from students saying, hey, I'm getting flooded with spam. Those calls, pretty safe for the students. Now, the employee setup, the employee mail domain that we had before was a little bit different from the perspective that we had the same filtering product in front of our employee domain as we did our student domain, but there's a little bit more to it. And so we had a plan B, actually, when we did the employee migration, and that was if the mail filtering that Google provided natively, the spam filtering, wasn't sufficient, then we have to, quickly investigate something like Stini to do some enhanced mail filtering. And we actually moved our mail exchange record. I know I'm getting a little technical here, but essentially what we did is on X day, all of our mail stopped flowing through Groupwise and instead just started through Google Apps. The spam that came into any individual's mailbox went down significantly. The email mess or the help tickets that we had typically seen from the help desk to the systems engineers to diagnose, why spam was coming through the system, that just didn't exist anymore. So we didn't go to Plan B. Plan A was very good, which is the spam filtering that Google has in the Gmail engine.
And how are you all handling e-discovery?
From the perspective of an needing to be frozen for discovery purposes, we'll disable the account and remove access to the user that owns the account. So not very elaborate, not very sophisticated, but that's how we've handled the discovery questions that come our way today.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up. That's a lot of questions we had there. So thanks, everyone, for asking. I guess, Brian and Max, did you all want to leave off with any other final notes or stories to share with us before we wrap up?
Just the fact that I think in general we've certainly have been very pleased with both, I think, from a technical standpoint and then just from a capability and user standpoint, our move to Google Apps. I think we're at the point now that if they said we couldn't do this anymore, I'd have a job somewhere else where I could use it. I guess I couldn't imagine working in an environment without this now.
I said that, Jordan.
Girl, thank you so much to you both for taking the time to share Boise State's story with us. And thank you to everyone else for attending. We hope this was helpful. I'm definitely seeing a lot of notes sent out to us saying that this was helpful and informative. So thank you for everyone for making this happen, and stay tuned for the next Fireside chat. We're actually looking to host that with McAllister College, a small liberal arts college in Minnesota. So thanks everyone, and have a great day. Bye.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Has left the conference.
TMCC.
Has left the conference.